Hey everybody, welcome back to Pretend World's Real People. As always, I'm Tyler. And I know it's been a little bit crazy. It was Halloween on Monday. We had an episode on Monday. But now you get an episode on Thursday because this weekend is the Denver Film Festival. Now, I haven't been, oh my God, I don't think I've been to the Denver Film Festival in well over 10 years. At least since I was midway through college. I just didn't have time. I was always working, constantly busy, but freshman, sophomore year, kind of in a junior year, I went religiously just to see all the independent films, whether they were, most of them were actually made in Colorado, which was great. So supporting local film in that way, but also independent film from all over the country and all over the world. And it's a really fun festival to check out. I know it's a little bit smaller, but if you're within, you know, driving distance, come check it out. Seriously, make a weekend out of it. It's so much fun sitting down, hearing all these great creatives talk about their projects, talk about their films, and just share their stories. And I don't know if you can't tell, I'm already super duper excited to see what lies await for the film festival. One of them, or at least one of the films, I should say, being Quantum Cowboys. A friend of the show, Kyle Gordon, is the star of that film. It is crazy. It's cosmic. It involves the multiverse theory. It is an incredible film that everybody needs to check out. And I mean, not to brag or anything, but I have that very director on this show for this episode, so I hope you stick around and listen to everything this just mad genius has to say, because he is not only a physicist, an animator, but he's also an incredibly humble, creative talent, and I can't wait to see, what he has up his sleeve next, which, as was teased in this episode, maybe a couple of really awesome things. So let's just get right into it. Let's sit down and let's have a chat with the great Geoff Marslett.
Hello, wonderful listeners. My name is Geoff Marslett, and I am the co-writer and director and lead animator and one of the actors in the feature film Quantum Cowboys that we premiered earlier this summer.
A film that I can't wait for everybody to check out. I don't think I was prepared when when I started watching it, just how uncanny and just head trippy, but also so full of heart, that movie would have. Super excited about it. But before we get into the nitty gritty of the film itself, I do always like to ask or not our listeners, our guests, how you found yourself in the middle of this industry during essentially a crazy time to be an artist and a filmmaker. Where did you start the sort of interest in the arts itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's filmmaking is maybe everyone who's in every art probably feels like theirs is in some ways the hardest, but I think that I could make a pretty good argument that independent filmmaking actually trumps all those other super hard paths you could take as an artist, in large part because it is, even when done on the smallest of small budgets, it's expensive. And even when done with the smallest of small crews, it's still a lot of people that it takes to pull this off. So you're already trying to do some kind of independent arts, which is crazy. And you're doing it with this really difficult art to pull off. And then there's not even really a way to show it by yourself. So you keep making it harder. And then you get to make one of these every 2 or 3 years. And you're like, if people don't like that one, I got to go 2 or 3 more years to even try to impress them, instead of driving down to another town and playing a show or painting a second painting. So all arts are hard, but film is, I think, really only for the insane, as far as indie film is concerned. So how did I find myself here? I mean, I feel like I spend all day long trying to talk people out of it and then showing them how to do it. So I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like a guy down an alleyway bit by a zombie who's like, you should leave this alleyway before you also get bit. But if you want to get bit, I'll show you the way. And I kind of think that's what filmmaking is. You really only do it if you just have this burning desire to get these ideas out there. And for all that difficulty and all those complaints I just gave about it, the magic is you do get to bring together so many cool people to help you realize your idea. And if it does work, you sit in a theater and someone stops you afterwards and they tell you something that they saw in your film or why it meant something to them or what they just figured out. And that is really amazing. I mean, I think all arts are some version of us as individuals trying to figure out how to communicate our own individual experience because no one else can ever know someone else's experience really, but we can use arts to try and say this is what my experience was. And when it works, it is like a strange magic trick. So I guess that's what drew me into it. But I started in physics and got a degree in math and philosophy and worked at the Naval Research Lab and thought I was going to do something very different, but didn't want to teach. And pretty quickly, I realized the part of science and physics that I really liked was quantum physics, was theoretical physics, and there's no applied job for that. There's just teaching. And I was like, well, I don't want to teach. So I went back to school for filmmaking and now I teach filmmaking. So this strange way that life doesn't let you do something other than it has in mind for you. It catches you and brings you back in. And film was that trap that my foot was stuck in. I think that's my answer.
No, it's a great answer. I'm curious how film had an effect on your life before all of this. As you were growing up, were you always very cinematically driven? Did you have any idols you looked up to as far as filmmaking goes?
Oh,
Or
absolutely. I've always enjoyed film and art. And, when I was when I graduated from high school, I almost went to the Art Institute of Chicago to paint. Lots of different things that I thought about doing because another thing that makes film great is you're allowed to be a bit schizophrenic about it and do all these different things for a little while, become an expert on this for, 2 years and then switch gears to this. So it's good for my type of personality, but I like doing a lot of things. Cinema was definitely one of them. I certainly remember the movies. I was, in high school in the early 90s and indie film blew me away. I mean, I've always loved Star Wars. I love, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But when I finally got to watch movies by people like, Jim Jarmusch and Alex Cox and Hal Hartley, I was like, this is something totally new and different. And so I did have, films like Straight to Hell that Alex Cox made, um, totally made me think, I want to make that. Like, this is the kind of film I want to make. David Byrne's True Stories made me think, I want to make that. Fast forward now, I'm lucky enough to put Alex Cox in my film. So I got, one of my bona fide, very early film heroes to come be in my film. And as it turns out, in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. My calendar is such a mess, I don't know anymore, but I'm gonna go to a film festival in Spain, and, Alex Cox and I are both gonna attend with my film, and it happens to take place on the set of Straight to Hell. So there's a 15-year-old Jeff that's like, "Oh, wait, I'm gonna go to the set of this movie with Alex Cox?" It's amazing. But, as I got a little older and more into film, I watched French New Wave and seeing, the Godard films and seeing things like Alphaville and, Anna Karina is, I think I'm not in a small group of people who would consider her a cinematic hero, and to have her at least make a brief appearance in this film is incredible. And Gary Farmer, who did, Pow Wow Highway, that's another movie I watched back in the day and was like, this is everything that I want to be doing. And, Gary was the first actor to come on board this film, and he'll be with us in Tucson in 3 or 4 days. We'll be down in Tucson with Gary, and then he'll also be with us in Santa Fe a week later. So Wednesday in Tucson, Wednesday in Santa Fe. But it's amazing. So these people that helped shape me as a filmmaker were the exact collaborators I was able to use on this film. And um, I think that's something most people don't ever get to do, that you not only get to kind of meet your heroes, but then collaborate with them. And um, even if that's as far as this film goes, to me, that's kind of amazing. And sometimes I have to take a step back and go, I mean, you got to make a movie with Gary Farmer and Alex Cox and Anna Karina, and then musicians that help shape me, Nico Case, John Doe from X, Hal Gelb, like they're playing the songs in the film, and then getting to bring on, a lot of these new people. I had never worked with, Kiowa Gordon, with David Arquette, with Lily Gladstone. It's pretty great to bring them all in, and then on top of that, get to bring my friends like Trieste and Frank Mosley and say, like, here's these friends that I've known for years, and they can be part of this film too. It Yeah, is kind of a charmed moment in my life that I will cherish. So
It seems like such a surreal experience, especially coming from a directing side. Like I can uh, connect with that from the acting portion of it, where you are collaborating for just a small snippet. But for you, I mean, you're the writer, you're the director, you're there for the entire process of it.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have to snap yourself with a rubber band at any moment in time during
I mean,
these interactions?
I definitely say, not even half jokingly, there are so many people who go into this business and they're like, "Oh, what I really wanna do is direct." And I really counsel people, be careful what you wish for. Directing is cool because in the end, there's no aspect of this film that doesn't have my fingers all over it. I've meddled with visually every single frame of this film, certainly all the crazy ideas I was able to put in here. The stuff that works is in large part something I had to do with, and the stuff that doesn't work is in large part something I had to do with. You get to do the whole thing. That's amazing. But um, you're forced to constantly be a part of this and constantly think about the creation of everything. You never get to just say, I'm going to do this piece of the puzzle as
Mm,
best I can and hope someone else is going to run with that. It's always back up to you. So um, that's already a very difficult chore, directing anything. Where I'd say people should really think, do you really want to direct? Because now as a director, I'm the guy that's like, but what I really want to do is act. Like I more and more, I'm like, I want a small role in somebody else's gigantic hassle so that I just come in for 2 weeks, I do my thing, I leave, and they call me in a year and say, hey, you did a great job. And I'm like, that's great. Or, hey, we cut you from the film. I'm like, oh, it's a bummer. But, having to do it, you never get to put this to bed. So for the last, 3 years, I've had to think about this film every day, some part of the day, every single day, and work on it until 4 in the morning. So being the director is cool because it is really your baby, but it's terrible in the sense that it does just hold on to you all the time and kind of stress you out. So it's not for the faint of heart to do that. And the rewards are slim. Truth be told, if your film does well, someone else will hire your actors, someone else will hire your DP. Hollywood doesn't want any more directors. Even when your film does well, they congratulate you, and then somehow at the end of the day, everyone else goes on to some other job, and you're just sort of sitting there in the corner, like, uh, I want a job, and they aren't there. So don't be a director again, unless you really making this thing is something you want to do. And then if you are going to direct, don't direct an animated film because it's going to take you longer and be harder to begin with. But I had a quote, which I wish I could remember my own quote because it was really good. But animation allows you absolute control. Nothing in my movie is an accident or random. Every image you put in a background, everything you do, you have control over. But with that absolute control also becomes this absolute responsibility that you have to think about every piece that goes into it. You're not given any of the freedom of just what did that day look like when you were shooting outside in this location. You don't get any of that. You have to think of it all. So you get to micromanage your universe, but you are also forced to micromanage your universe, and you don't get to pick when and turn that on and off. So again, if you're crazy, animate a feature film. It's really cool. You get to do everything, but just be ready for it to be all encompassing.
I mean, you you brought up the idea of, being schizophrenic
Yeah.
might help in this instance if you work on a project like this. And having watched it, I'm curious what your outlining process was like, just going over everything before you shot a frame of film. Where were you on the floor just outlining with note cards trying to break everything down? Were you literally sketching and storyboarding in continuous just to get everything going? I mean, what was that process like?
I
'Cause
mean,
it's
it's a
daunting.
lot of, I don't know. You can see it's a lot of these.
Oh, yes.
I'm a Moleskine notebook guy,
Yeah.
and so the initial ideas were really me and Hal, usually down in Tucson. Hal Gelb, who also co-wrote the initial story idea with me. He and I would come up with ideas for scenes, things we wanted to put in here. A lot of this movie is ideas about why we create art and how art creates its own universes, much like the quantum theory of multi-worlds, that creating art is creating multi-worlds. And honestly, creating memory is creating multi-worlds. And where we differ from, I'll just call it the Marvel model, but there's so many movies now that follow the multiverse where it's an excuse to have 5 Spider-Mans. And that's cool. That's fine. That's a thing. That's not, as someone who study physics, it's not really what the multi-worlds theory is saying in science. The multi-worlds theory is coming much more out of, Niels Bohr and Schrodinger and these ideas of the non-existence of local reality and the fact that observation affects reality, and these ideas of Heisenberg's uncertainty theory and everything can exist, but that multiple universes do come in contact and extinguish each other to leave sort of one thing standing. And even just me explaining that's like, well, that's a bunch of confusing words. I made a movie that's a bunch of confusing words mixed with some confusing images now to kind of say that same stuff. But, those are the ideas deep down that Hal and I were talking about. And he was talking about it from a musical standpoint. So how does that affect songwriting, which is the art form he does? And from there we started to talk about what did we have these weird iconic music that we've created to say this is the American West. So you hear the theme from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Ennio Morricone has become what the West sounds like, but that doesn't make any sense. Ennio Morricone is not actually someone from the Old West. In fact, Ennio Morricone was contemporary modern person from Europe. Not even. But because those films, which turned out to be, when people think about what did the Wild West of Texas look like, they see a guy from California, Clint Eastwood, out in southern Spain being directed by an Italian, in the 60s and 70s. Amazing movies, but though that's become people's vision of the West and has very little to do with any kind of real West. But what it did do is it created a piece of art that became so indelible that lots of people internalized it, and then it became history. And I think we really do build history that way. So this is a really long answer to your question, but keeping that in mind is what I kept in mind in writing the script. So I knew I wanted to take the world of the Western because it's so iconic and remind people that what we think of as the West, as cool as that is, as much as I love watching those movies, has nothing to do with reality. And we wanted to say this is what music in the Old West actually sounded like. It sounded like, sonic youth on untuned banjos. It was like there was dissonance. People didn't have tuners. People didn't have a lot of training. They just had instruments they pulled out in a bar and played them. So we created what we thought that really sounded like. But again, as soon as we do that, I want people to look at it and say, oh, that's really cool how Hal and Geoff have just told us what music really sounds like in the West. But actually, we just made it up as well because neither of us were around back then. So it's this way of we've just tried to really present an alternative memory. And so then I wanted to continue to build on that and say we have to be reminded that two people can have opposing views or memories of an event, of a place, and they can both be correct. There isn't always a correct answer. So that gave me a really good freedom, though, in keeping it all together. So I haven't lost your question of how did I keep this all together, was knowing that contradictions can be built into the script, that as long as I remembered my rules of the universe and what I wanted to say, I could present different people's points of view, and those could be contrasting. So there could be actual contradictions in the film. But what I had to do then that was hard, the part that comes down to those moleskin notebooks or these note cards that you have to keep drawing, is that in the film we use 15 different visual styles, and those visual styles each represent a universe. Each of those universes is in fact a point of view of one of the characters. So what I did have to do is I had to make sure that I used the proper animations so that three scenes animated the same way never contradict each other in a point of view, but they might contradict scenes that are shown in a different animation style. So really did have to be careful. And I think all in all, the only person in this production who really knew that answer was me. I was the only one with notebooks full of things saying, no, this part has to look this way, no, this part. And then, the cast, my collaborators were so generous to trust me. They let me say, okay, just no, what you're doing is fine here. It can be different here. And I just had to keep those elaborate notes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Another confusing answer for you, but that was
No,
really the truth of it.
not confusing. I mean, honestly, I didn't want to spoil too much, and obviously nothing's been spoiled online. But listening to you talk about the film through various interviews at different festivals, and the idea of exploring the multiverse theory in a way that's not, like you said, five uh, five characters of a certain IP that are
Yeah.
just pushed together from various worlds that differ a little
Yeah.
bit. I love the idea and this theory that a photograph is an alternative version of history where there's two different points,
Yeah.
but it could have conflicting points within that singular moment that moment happened. And watching the movie, it I don't know, it hit differently than any other multiverse, multi-dimensional story could. I think that's what's going to make it stand out. That and the animation in it is completely gnarly and fun and fun. At a certain point, I thought, "Wait, is my coffee kicking in?" Because
Yeah,
certain
no,
frames are shaking as it's moving, and
oh,
it's
there's
brilliant.
I use what I call smear vision. We
Yeah.
use paper, we cut out paper and rebuilt them into little doll houses. There's traditional stop motion, there's digital rotoscoping. There's a thing called EB synth. So that, like, the stuff when they go to the flashback to Vietnam or flash forward to Vietnam, I just did these really detailed images and used this EB synth to do some of the tweening there. So there's even some image processing in places. There's oil paintings. I mean, we ran the gambit on creating that. And what's funny is I wanted people to feel, because I loved watching. You can take something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and you can see. I feel like what we get to see there is we go with a character and we see them interact in different universes, and I think that that's actually really cool. But again, I want to do something different, and I wanted the audience. I wanted to say, instead of that, I don't want to see the character go to different audiences. I want to keep seeing the same characters, but I want to pick up the audience and keep throwing them into different universes to watch it. So I wanted the whole format of the film to change. So that you sitting with your coffee, you're like, did the movie just change? What in the world happened? We really wanted people to feel like they didn't watch someone go to different universes. They had to go to a different universe and watch someone. So that, like, it sounds, I think, like semantics, but hopefully that makes sense. I really wanted to lift the audience and drop you into hand drawn for a minute, and then drop you into an oil painting, and then drop you into those, so that you had to see through that world and everything was suddenly different. And then try to stitch it all back together by the end, which I think if a viewer doesn't want to put in the work to put that together, my movie could seem very random and they could be frustrated. But I think if they're willing to meet me halfway and think about it, I hope it comes together in the end in a way that people feel like, wait, I'm at least starting to understand what this film was trying to do.
Oh, yeah. I
That's
mean, I
the
would say this movie calls for everyone, put your phone down, shut it off and just live in the film itself. And yeah, you are dropping the audience in different places, but you're treating them with the respect of, this is, it's not going to be spoon fed to you, but this is
yeah,
happening. It'll click in. And I
yeah.
loved that about the film.
That's my favorite
Yeah.
films, are films you have to watch 5 times, because, I mean, it's why I love a good David Lynch film. That's why I love a film where the 3rd time through, I'm like, I didn't even see that the first 2 times, so that's what I hope I gave the world, is a film that someone will watch 5 times and be like, "This is different every time I watch it."
Yeah. I do. I want to touch on your animation background. Now, did you? I mean, obviously, you were painting. You were an artist even before this as well. But as far as the rotoscoping and the animation portion of it, is that something you were teaching yourself when you went back to school for film, or was it something that you were just picking up as
It's
the years went on?
it's mostly the latter, though I give a good shout out here to my friend Francesca Talenti, who I haven't seen in a long time. But I took one in my entire training as an animator. I took one animation class, an intro to animation, once, and she taught that class, and I really loved it. And for my final project, I made a film called Monkey versus Robot. I didn't really know that much what I was doing. I animated with Sharpies on typing paper in an old program called Director, and I timed it by literally just looking at my watch and being like, "Oh, that's probably in sync." I didn't know what I was doing at all. I scanned at 72 DPI, um, but it became a hit. It played some festivals. It went to Slam Dance. It went uh, all over the world. It played like 50 or 60 film festivals. Ended up on HBO Central Europe, I think, and PBS, and all these places. And it was used to be on the internet before we had to pull it down, but it had over 1 million views back in like 2001, when the internet still, I feel like, was a teenager. And suddenly I realized more people had watched this stupid short that I made than I will ever meet. And that starts to be this crazy thing that weighs on you. Like, you made this thing, you had some sort of virtual conversation with more people than you'll ever meet. And it really got me hooked on the format, because I was like, wow, this gets to take what I used to do in drawing and painting, and lets me do all these things. So from there, I just self-taught, and then pretty quickly started self-teaching others. I mean, I basically built the animation program at the University of Texas at Austin back in the early days. I took it from being a one elective course to a whole line of courses. Was able to hire more faculty to come and help me teach it and to do things that I didn't know how to do. And I love it. I think animation is a lot like math and science. It's a weird system. And when you start to learn the system of how you can do this magic trick of making people see motion, then you're like, I could do that with anything. So suddenly you were doing just like we did with this film and saying, it doesn't have to look like Disney. It doesn't have to look like Pixar. It doesn't have to look like Jan Svankmajer. It can look like anything you want to do as long as you can visualize it and then start playing with stuff until you can make that look. The sky's the limit. And that, again, to whatever craziness is in me, that's really appealing. I'm like, well, no one's ever seen an animation look like this. Let's do that. Um, and you can. And sometimes it fails horribly, and sometimes it works great. But I love the process of bumps and bruises. I love to make some things that don't work. I love imperfections. So animation is very good at creating all of the above. And yeah, so then I kept teaching myself animation over the last 20 years, and I'm still learning. So I think I'm going to make a side project soon from some Yiddish folk tales that's all stop motion. And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Let's build some crazy models. Let's articulate them. We'll figure out if they work halfway through. So,
Oh my goodness. I have a very pertinent question. How do you balance teaching, your essentially your day job with your artistic endeavors? I mean, how do you balance that internally?
it's very, very hard. Your own, your own personal life. I think if someone wants to be an independent filmmaker, you almost have to reach this point where independent filmmaking is not only your second career, which is probably going to be more hours than your primary career, but it also needs to be essentially what you do to socialize, to have fun. It's your life because it will eat it all up. I think twice somewhere in my 40s, I took a vacation with my partner and her mom. For 30 years, I didn't go on a vacation ever. I never was like, you know what I just really want to do? I want to go to this place. So I'm going to buy a ticket and go there. On the other hand, I've been to all 50 states. I've been to 20 countries. I've gotten to travel the world, but it's always in conjunction with showing a film or doing something with this. So I think there's a version of this where you say, okay, I get a lot of cool adventures and I get to do these things, but you have to figure out how that job is your fun extra time because there is no real balance. And your health does take a bit of a hit. I mean, my voice sounds like this not because it's supposed to, but because the last 2 months I haven't stopped traveling, and I'm going to finish this today. I'm going to work on some stuff I've got to send, hopefully entice a distributor, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to get up and teach 2 classes. Tomorrow afternoon I'm going to drive to Tucson. We're going to show a film. Then I'll fly to Montana. Then I'll fly back and teach 2 more classes, and then fly to Santa Fe and show the film, and then fly back and teach some more classes, and then go to Spain and fly back and teach some more. So you're always on the run trying to do this balance. And even making this, I just gave myself the rule that when the sun comes up, you have to stop working. So honestly, for 2.5 years, I worked until about 4:30 in the morning, and then would sleep from 4:30 until 9 and go teach the day job and then come back. Even when we shot this, we would start our days, at like 10:30 so that I could get up at 7 a.m., go teach college. Then the script supervisor would pick me up from the university and drive me directly to set where we would start shooting. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. And you start to do it, you're like, what? This is insane. How are you doing that? And I think if you want something enough, you just figure out how to do it, even when it's not a very good balance. And you just say, okay, I'm going to commit to doing this and drink a lot of coffee.
What it doesn't seem like you're keeping yourself in one facet of, being an artist as well. I mean, you just said you have a project coming up you want to work on with stop motion. I mean, I'm sure that keeps it, a little more invigorating than, oh, I have another 90-page script I need to adapt and film, next summer. I'm sure that makes it a little more exciting each and every time.
It really does. And, I think different people have different approaches. There are filmmakers I love who make a lot of their effort at doing the same thing a little better every time until they become the master of that genre or the master of that type of filmmaking. That hasn't been what I want to do. I'm much more interested in my own features. My first feature, Mars, was a sci-fi romance animated film feature. I followed that up with Loves Her Gun, which was a written, but all the dialogue was improvised, totally live action, dark drama. Then I went and produced a documentary with no dialogue about a river in Central Texas. Made some crazy shorts, came back and made whatever Quantum Cowboys is. I was like, why don't I make partially animated, partially 16 millimeter quantum physics film that's also a Western and a musical. And people are like, yeah, why not? Ooh, oh, about time travel too. So we made that. I like I like to challenge myself to make new things, to do something new. That's exciting for me. And I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head. If you get up every morning and you're like, I'm going to solve this new problem, it's easier, I think, to push through the long hours because it is new and fresh. I always feel a little bit like a student myself in that way. I'm learning what I'm doing as I move along. I'm trying to invent to some degree a new wheel with each film, and doesn't make it better or worse than anyone else's film. It just makes it my style of film, and I do enjoy doing that.
Yeah. And outside of the beast that is stop motion, I mean, is there something you want to accomplish within your career, and maybe not within the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but something you'd like to just finish or do? Is there any sort of great white buffalo that you're chasing career wise?
You know, I think that in some ways I was able to do that with this film, but I would like to go maybe even a little further with that. And that um, I think as a consumer of art, I'm always looking for something I've never seen. That's what I find really exciting when I see something and I'm like, even if I hate it, if I see something new and I'm like, man, I hate that thing, but I didn't know I hated that thing until I just discovered that thing existed. It was still new. And so there's a little part of me, it's like, well, that's a hike I'm never going on again. But I'm kind of glad I did. So now I know I don't like that. I That's my, white whale. I want to create some stuff that no one's ever seen before. I want someone to watch it and be like, well, Jeff made that thing and that's him. Like it's not derivative of anything at some point. It just, even if they don't like it, I hope I gave people something they've never seen before. And what I would really hope to do, I mean, I hope there's some version of the universe where we get to make the two sequels to this film, because I want to raise the bar two more times on this film. I want people to watch this one and think they understood what was going on, and then give them the second one and go, wow, maybe I really don't understand what's going on here. There's more to this. And then there's a third one, like, oh, let's see if we wrap this up or if I just keep digging the hole deeper. But that would be a goal of mine, is to somehow have the freedom and the budget and the team to keep making these for a little while. Because um, again, I hope that somewhere along the way, somebody like me will stumble on them and say, wow, I didn't know a film could be this. And then they'll go make something totally different. But that is the thing I really want to put on the screen, is the kind of movies where people say, I didn't even know this could be a film. I, you know, that's exciting to me. That's exciting to me as a viewer, and it's definitely exciting to me as a maker.
That was actually going to be my next question. Where's the bringing up the continuation factor of this story, and whether or not you consider, still filming within Colorado like you did with this one?
Yeah, I might not film here
Hmm.
for for two reasons. One, um, just in Colorado, and I teach here, and I love living here. I think we've still got a long ways to go to build infrastructure that makes it feasible, especially for lower budget films. I think we're very feasible for expensive films to come here and film. And so, things like Hateful Eight come to the state and they can very successfully look amazing in Colorado because we have great mountains. We actually have a ton of geography to show and relatively good weather. Although I will say that we shot this whole movie below freezing and it shouldn't have been. It was in October. The year we shot it was the same dates we're sitting here right now, and it's beautiful outside. For some reason, October 2019 was awful and cold and snowed like 3 feet, which made all of our horse scenes. And if you watch this movie, every scene where you see people riding horses, the director of the film had to go through frame by frame and cut all that snow out and replace the ground with non-snow ground. So that brings up the second reason. I think the film takes place in Arizona and in these deserts, and it's hot, and trying to get Colorado to cooperate with desert and hot is harder than I want it to be. So there's a part of me, it's like, let's just drive down to New Mexico or Arizona and shoot the sequels, where it'll probably look more like what we want when we take the actors outside for any of the live action stuff. That having been said, what was great shooting here, and one of the reasons we might still, is the crew we did get to work with was amazing here in Colorado. There is a very small but very committed group of indie filmmakers in this state, and they do actually make really cool stuff. I think sadly most of them leave the state to do the work because they're just isn't enough of an indie film infrastructure here to keep them employed and, keep them getting to do as much of what they want. So they go down to Albuquerque or Santa Fe, or they go out to LA, or they go out to New York. They even go up to Montana.
Mm.
I think that Colorado needs better incentives. Colorado needs some more affordable shooting spaces. All the things that make, frankly, Colorado needs one or two TV series shooting here regularly so that there are actors that are living here. Because we lose a lot of good actors. There's a lot of really good actors from Colorado. There's, that don't live here anymore because if you're a really good actor and you want to keep working, it's hard to find enough gigs living here. So of course you move down to Albuquerque, or of course you move to LA. And I can't fault anyone, but it does make it hard as a director of indie films to keep looking for your local resources here, because you're almost going to have to bring everything in. So I don't know. The answer is we might shoot here again. It would really depend on how it aligns, but it's a challenging state to do a major project in, and that's kind of a bummer because it's also an awesome state to do a major project in.
Yeah, it's been, I don't know, at least on my end, about a 12-year wait of them saying, "Oh, we're introducing incentives," and then every year
Yeah,
it's denied. It never goes through. So we're just sitting here holding our breath for
yeah. Keep
something to
hoping.
happen.
There's some great folks up in Fort Collins, trying to get, I know they got like the Horsetooth Festival off the ground, and they're
Yeah.
doing, 48-hour. There are people here really trying to put things together. The AD on my film, Alex, he just finished a feature film, um, but it's very hard because there isn't the level of state support you would get in Colorado or in New Mexico, and that state support not only can support your projects, but because that state support is supporting major TV shows and other productions, then all the people that are employed in New Mexico working on those are available to work on your project as a side project. And here we've kind of got commercials, and commercials are great because they pay well, but they're actually hard for indie people because then you try and get a sound person from commercials, and their day rate is way out of it's what a commercial can pay. It's not what an indie film can pay. So then you're like, hey, can you work for nothing? And they're like, I don't want to work for nothing. And then pretty soon you're driving down to New Mexico. And, anywhere that there's just more people working it as a jobby job, there's more people that can work yours as a side job. And that's Colorado. It's a hard formula, but if it would start with Colorado giving us more incentives. And I think that that's the first step towards what's improved in Austin, what's improved in New Mexico, Arizona just passed a bunch of new incentives. It's Colorado should jump on it because otherwise everyone's going to go to the edges and leave Colorado behind. So
Yeah.
that-
I mean, isn't it insane? We passed a an amendment to legalize marijuana in state before we've ever, truly allowed big film projects or TV projects to come through here. I have friends who are very up and coming independent filmmakers who just swept 48-hour film festival in
yeah,
LA.
yeah,
It's insanity.
and they're
Just
probably sending you emails like you should move to LA, bro. Like
yeah,
I feel like that's what everybody will tell you because there are more opportunities. So many more things are getting made that it just and then it becomes hard because honestly, even when a project comes to Colorado, they're more likely to import someone from LA to do a job than hire someone locally. And at first, that just sounds awful. But I also get it because they get worried the Colorado crew doesn't have enough work that they're up to speed and well oiled. But if they hire this LA crew that's been working every single week this month, they know you're coming right off another set and you already know what you're doing. So I also get where they're even afraid, even a Colorado based production is afraid I can hire a local and hope they know what they're doing, or I can hire this tried and true crew that just came off of 3 TV movies. And since everyone's bean counting, it's hard to fault these companies that are like, let's just bring in the out of town crew. But if we could get things running here, so people are always shooting something in Colorado, they won't have those fears. They'll have
yeah.
a well-oiled local crew, which is always better than a well-oiled, road crew. So I guess I've got optimism in me, but I think there's still some pretty big hurdles. I hope this my film. I mean, it's a small piece of it, but I hope some aspect of the powers that be in Colorado can see. I shot a film here, and we premiered at Annecy, and we won the audience choice in Paris, and we played Munich, and we played Fantastic Fest. So they can start to see something made here really can compete on that national and international field, but we just need to be able to make more here.
Yeah. No, I have a great feeling about it, honestly. I'm excited to see what happens and amidst this crazy industry that we've decided to completely devote our lives to.
And it's
Uh
absorbing. It will it will pull you in. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like a sand pit, honestly. But with all of that, it's a lot of just there's a lot of acidic elements to working in this industry, building a career, making a project, making sure somebody sees that project, and not even caring if they like it, but just seeing if something works out. So with that, I love asking, what do you do to decompress? Because not only do you have this, you have a job teaching and
Yeah.
going over papers and creating a whole structure for your class. So what do you do to help yourself sort of calm down and decompress from the day or the week or the months
It
that you've had?
it's super hard. What that is one great thing though, living out in the West, living in Colorado or Arizona or New Mexico. The number one thing I probably do is I really do love to go hike. I just get out in nature. It's a few minutes where you don't have to look at a screen. Nothing's demanding you do some work. Like you're 12,000 feet and 3 hours from your car. You're going to have to walk back for 3 more hours and just not do the other stuff. And I think that for me is the best. I love going to national parks. I love stopping into whatever the local diner, Mexican food, whatever I can get that to me, that's what I love doing. And other people have maybe they play a sport or they do, different things, but I really like to go and see some nature and walk around, eat at a small local place, get some coffee. That's my favorite thing to do to decompress. And again, that is one nice thing about being out here in the West is there's a lot of that to do. It's we do have a wealth of mountains to climb and streams to hike along, and all of that really helps me a lot. That's probably the number one thing I do. It was that
Yeah.
and pet my cat. My cat passed away recently, so I don't get to pet her anymore. But that was
Oh
the other thing.
wow.
Just come over at the end of the day, get yourself a good cat. She helped me animate this film. She sat on my lap every day. You find something that helps you unplug from the rest, and it's important because otherwise you're going and you're going. I mean, you can even hear it in my interview. You start talking fast. You're thinking fast. You're always like, I got to do three things at once. And then sometimes you can just go for a walk and get yourself back into this
Yeah.
speed. You're like, oh yeah, well that's okay. This is a little more relaxed.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your cat. I mean,
Yeah,
that's especially during all of this. If that was
I
ever
know.
going to happen, that's probably the worst time for that
It
to
was a
happen.
bad time, but she's in the film. She is the cat in the
Yeah.
film too, so she gets to make an appearance. How many feral cats from Austin can say they were in a movie with David Arquette and Anna Karenina? Like that's not most cats. It's a good claim to fame.
She
So
was a feral cat.
yeah, yeah. It took
Oh
us
man.
about 7 years to get her to let us even touch her. She was a very skittish, shy feral cat, and once we got her in and she learned about, bisque and,
Hmm.
canned cat food and sleeping on the bed. Within a year or so, she was like, I'm never going outside again, guys. I hate the outside. I sleep in the bed. And she was the most cuddly, sweet cat ever then. Some of the vets were like, she's feral. You'll never tame her. But she was beyond tame. She's really a wonderful, like, little companion. And she did, because I would work until the middle of the night every night for a couple of years, and she liked that because then I would feed her every 2 hours all night. But then she'd also sit on my lap and walk around the computer. Sometimes put her paw on the keyboard and help me that way. But it was pretty great.
Oh my god, I love that. Well, I've quick
Yeah.
anecdote. I've worked in breweries, since beginning of college, on and off, and they always had feral cats to, keep the vermin out.
Yep. Yep.
Every single one I met, yeah, they're labeled as this, ferocious beast. But the second you show them a little bit of compassion, a little bit of care
Oh
and
yeah.
love, they'll never leave your side.
Yeah.
It's
They become so
insane.
sweet. I think they're
Yeah.
out there. They've been living a hard life out there. And whenever they realize you're like a friend, they can be the sweetest. I mean, they're my favorite,
Yeah.
feral cats are yeah, I much kinship to feral cats, and I think they've worked their way through it, and so, yeah, I'm that crazy cat guy in the street, in Austin, I had a feral colony, and I'd do the catch and release, get them and fix them, and then
Mm.
keep them in the yard, put food out, but yeah, we had no squirrels, no rats, none of the vermin that other people in the neighborhood had because,
Yeah.
there were 20 cats in the yard. They patrol pretty well, They do their job.
The most dangerous yard in
Yep.
Austin for a
Yeah.
rat.
Yeah, if you're a
By
rat, you're
far.
like, "Not going there," whatever that is, it looks like the worst place I could ever go, so
Well, given your incredibly diverse background and just everything you have an interest in, everything you want to do, I do also like this might be my favorite question of all to ask during this
yeah.
show is if you have a party story you could share with the show. Now, it doesn't have to be something that takes place at a party, but a moment, an interaction, a memory you have, working either on set, writing, just anything, even during your life that stood out so immensely you could easily recall it at a party. Do
Oh,
you have anything like that you could
well, I
share?
mean, yes, the answer is so many. I mean, again, I mean, really, I feel like that's whenever I get old and die, however far away that is, and you think back, there's so many moments that I'm like, well, I did that thing and it was insane, but I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah.
Honestly, making films, touring with those gives you a lot of that opportunity. So yeah, I've got a lot of those crazy stories. There's a really good one about flying to Dublin and getting a lock in at a bar and then having to get to Berlin. But I'll give you a shorter one because that's like a whole series. I'll give you a recent one that is a party story of a party. But we were on tour with the film in Europe. We premiered at Annecy in the French Alps, and we just had a great time. Annecy's everyone there. For anyone who doesn't know, it's the #1 animation festival in the world, and they were premiering Minions and they were premiering Buzz Lightyear there, and we were in the indie film competition, which was fantastic, and we'd have theaters packed full of these animators, so it was a great time. But we had a week to kill between there and our next festival, which was in Paris. Actually, not even a week, like 3 days or something, at the Champs-Élysées Film Festival. And we had a press agent, and she was amazing. And we just, John, one of the actors, and I became friends with her and took off on this crazy road trip between the two, where we were like, John and I were just going to take a train in from Annecy to Paris, and it was going to be boring and regular and just what you do. But she was like, no, no, come with me. And we drove to this crazy spa. I would never pay 65 euros to go to a spa, but I was like, when else am I going to be in the French Alps? Maybe paying 65 euros to go to a spa. So we did. And it's at like the base of Mont Blanc, and it's in Chamonix. And we're just there and you're drinking wine in this incredible spa. And then we get in the car and we drive to Burgundy and wine country. And we're now in these like 700-year-old basements drinking better wine. And I was sure good wine would be lost on me. I'm like, I'm some guy from Texas. Like, do I really know the difference between, a $30 bottle of wine and a $200 bottle of wine? The answer is probably not. Turns out the answer was actually yes. It does taste that much better. But these crazy old French guys, they don't speak English. She's helping us get our wine. We do all that. We get to Paris, and Paris is Paris. So we're showing a film, and the Champs-Élysées Film Fest is amazing. And they throw a party on this rooftop that overlooks the Arc de Triomphe at the top of the Champs-Élysées every night. So now we're drinking wine, and suddenly it's been like 3 weeks of not sleeping, because you're just up all night with people telling you they like your work, which as a maker is the greatest thing that can ever happen. Is someone's like, your movie's amazing. I'm like, let's have another. I want to hear you say that more. So we're doing all of that, and we're looking at this, and the pictures are beautiful. And finally we have to go to Munich. And I mean, you say the word Munich, it's like, well, that's probably cool. We're going to play the Munich Film Festival, but is Munich going to be Paris? Like, no one says like, I want to have my wedding in Munich. They're all like, we're going to go to Paris for our honeymoon. So we were all like, well, we're going to leave Paris and we're going to go to Munich, and it'll be good. It'll be like the come down before we go back to the States. And we go to Munich, and somehow magically Munich was amazing. We found a hotel lobby that just somehow let us drink all night in their hotel lobby. I'm not even totally sure this is legal, so I'm going to leave all the names of everything off. But somehow they would let us just keep a list of how many bottles of wine we took from the bar and drank in this lobby full of taxidermy and red velvet. And people joined us, and it was like we had gone through the wardrobe in Narnia. It was like this magic place where we're all exhausted, but suddenly you're in Munich. We made this strange pop-up bar where everyone looks like they're in a Renaissance painting. And by the third night of that, everyone at the festival who would hear about it wanted to join us and sit there. And our musician from Ireland is playing piano, and a couple of other filmmakers that came to a screening from the UK have shown up, and I'm there with one of the actors, and Lily's flown in, and she's sitting in a chair that looks like a swan, and it was just like, who knew Munich could be so magical, and how pulling yourself out of your normal circumstances and going and just being able to sit in this hotel lobby until the sun comes up, and you're pulling the red velvet curtains shut, and the guy who runs the hotel is like, you just got to be gone by the time we serve breakfast at 8 a.m. And you're so drunk and you're so tired, and you have to show your film again at like 11 a.m. in a few hours, and you have 5 interviews in the morning, but you just keep doing it. That was pretty this pretty amazing experience to be there. And you didn't want to leave, and to even now, whatever, 3 months later, you're like, wow, if I could just magically go back to sit in that space and have my glass of wine and just not care that it's 5:30 in the morning and I'm exhausted because we're just enjoying art for its own sake. It doesn't sound like the wildest thing to do, but I feel like it's more fun than some of the wildest crazy things I've done, is to just sit there and kind of wallow in art and be so far from the rest of your life. And you're just sitting there talking to people from all different continents about why you make a movie. And no one cares about our responsibilities for that little window. It was pretty darn incredible. So thank you, Munich. Munich Film Fest, thank you for having us. We even named our mysterious pop-up bar the Missing Apple. So thank you for letting us create the Missing Apple bar in the middle of the night. So yeah. Is that a
That
good story?
Yeah, that was so much better than I expected it would be. Like, but by far, usually it's, I met this person, or I interacted with this person, but you created a such a tangible memory that I don't have, but I feel like I've
Now
acquired through
well,
you.
sometime come with me to Munich, and you will
Yeah.
be invited to the Missing Apple bar. So
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, wow. Not sure who's going to top that this week. I can tell you that much. But this follow-up goes well with that, which is, if you have any advice you could pass along to our listeners, whether it's somebody who is, in the middle of college and wants to be an artist, or maybe there's somebody who has been, kind of honing their skills for the last few years and is a little too afraid to make that final
yeah.
jump. Do you have anything you could pass along to them?
Yeah, several things. I mean, one thing really is something I hinted at the beginning. The first thing I always tell people when they're like, "Hey, I want to make movies. I want to get into this." Don't don't write off all of the trades that go into making a film, because while the director does a cool thing, everybody on set does a really cool thing. And if you find costume design is your thing, cinematography, script supervising, I mean, all these, gaffing, that if you pick a trade instead of being the masthead, instead of being the director, you really can focus on just doing that amazingly well. And you can do 4 films a year, 5 films a year doing that. So come the end of 3 years, you have 15 films you got to work on, and we're all exciting and cool. As a director, for good or bad, you are shackled to one film until you see it through. So you'll get to do like one film in 3 or 4 years. And if it doesn't turn out how you want, you got to be okay knowing you threw 3 or 4 years away on that. So the first bit of advice I give people that I think they often miss is, don't write off those other jobs as unimportant. Don't write them off as unrewarding. Don't write them off as uncreative. That sometimes getting to work, on 10 different films doing that thing you like can be 10 times more rewarding. So I that's the first thing I tell people is, I think too often we go, "Oh, who's the guy that made that film?" And like, well, it's actually not some guy that made that film. It's a whole army of different individuals that made that film, and they're all having just as fulfilling a time doing it. So that's the first bit of advice I give, is really decide if directing is what you actually want to do, and don't ever feel bad, or don't feel like, oh, I somehow copped out by not being the director, because none of that's true. The director isn't more important or better. It's just another one of the jobs. If you do want to be the director, the next thing I'd tell you is, if there's any way you can do it within the industry, meaning you can do it with some kind of distribution attached for your projects, I would do that instead of going the independent route, just because the independent route is very far from a guarantee that your work will even be seen, much less that you get to make another one. I know so many amazing directors who made one great indie film and then never got to make another because the financials of this are so difficult. Whereas if you can attach yourself to a sci-fi TV show, or you can attach yourself to anything that has built-in distribution, you'll get paid. You do your job well, you'll get to make another one. So I would say explore that before you run out of options there. Um, Third, I would say if you're going to do independent, you're going to do it, don't ever get up and think, what do people want? What am I going to make that will make that splash? Because you've already missed the boat. If you want to make what people want, go back one step in my flow chart and do it in the industry, because what people want, they'll pay for in the industry. So don't make it out here independently. This is harder. Go back. If it's what people want, make it in the industry. But if what you really want to say from your inside is totally crazy and totally individual, and you tried to walk this, and like the industry is like, you are exactly what we don't want, which, take it from me. You may hear that. Nobody was clamoring for Quantum Cowboys. Nobody was like, this is the film we really want to see. They were like, absolutely not the film we want to make. If that's what's left and you still really want to make it, then I would say the third part of this, though it sounds kind of counter to the other two, is just don't let anyone tell you no. Be realistic about what your resources are, and then figure out how you can tell that idea with those resources. And that might mean make a 3-minute short instead of a feature. Pick some tiny part of what you want to say and say that as well as you can. It might mean spend 8 years and do it with stop motion, dolls. It might mean a lot of things, but I think if it's still something you want to say, ask yourself what you want to say and why you want to say it. And then buy a Moleskine notebook. I tell my students this all the time. Work until you can give me 2 sentences that tell me exactly what you want to say and why you want to say it. And then look at those and say, how can I do this on my resources? Then this is a very important last step of this. Don't try to overbite. If you know you can't have 5 celebrity actors and a giant budget for effects, don't try to make a Marvel movie. That's crazy. Yours won't work. It won't look as good. Ask yourself how you can still say what you wanted to say, smaller and better. You're always better to shrink the scope, but make the output you make exceptional. And if it still says that individual thing that you really want to say, it's going to be exceptional. And when I say exceptional, I just mean stand out. It might be exceptionally bad. It might be exceptionally successful. It might be something no one even recognizes the value of for 20 years, but it'll be that thing you wanted to say. So again, all my answers today have been long. That's kind of a long answer, but I would say don't write off. Don't assume you have to be the director. Do actually look for ways that there are in the industry for you to get paid doing it. But if what you want to say is still there, don't let anyone tell you no, and just find a way and find a scope to do that as well as you can. And then you know what? Do it. Don't wait 10 years. I've got a lot of friends who've never made their film because they've been waiting for the perfect storm of financing and this and that. That perfect storm is unlikely to show up if it didn't. It's going to show up fast, or it's not showing up at all. So if you've been working on this thing for a year and you haven't gotten traction, I would say look at it, ask yourself how you can make it yourself next month, and then just figure out how, and then do it. And then if it doesn't work, ask yourself how you can make a different one 6 more months later and try that. And obviously don't put your family in bankruptcy. So again, figure out what you could do. Do you have friends that'll do this with you? What are the production values you can't afford? But keep trying, because the other thing that's going to happen is every single film you make, if you're doing it right, you're going to get better. So whatever film you're making right now, hopefully this is the worst one you'll make for the rest of your life. And I'm not wishing you ill on this film, but just know that however it is, the next one's better, and the next one's better, and the next one's better. That's what I would say is my best advice.
Oh, I love it. And I know you say you're saying, you're dragging these answers along. They're long-winded. They're not. This is
Okay.
pertinent, very, very much needed information, especially when it comes to wanting to be a filmmaker, especially a filmmaker of, your ilk, where you are taking all these different things and putting them together and making it work. So that's perfect.
Thanks.
And outside of Quantum Cowboys, is there anything that I can promote with this episode, whether it be another film, upcoming project, maybe an organization you really believe in? Is there anything I can?
Yeah, what I always encourage people, if I hope you all will come see Quantum Cowboys. If you can find where to see it, like I said, we're in Tucson, we're in Santa Fe, we're in Missoula, we're in Spain, we're in Poland, we're in Vancouver tonight. I think we're actually in Vancouver, Canada, BC. We're also playing Minneapolis at Sound Unseen coming up, and we are playing Korea. If anyone in Korea is listening to this right now, we're also playing the Busan Animation Festival. So I think those are our next bunch of ones. I could have left one out. Hopefully there was no offense to anyone. It's just me being spread thin. But I do, if you can watch it, I'd love the support. Let me know what you think. If you like it, go on, without a box and say nice things. If you don't like it, you can keep that to yourself. It's fine. Or IMDb or wherever you vote for things. But if if you did see it and enjoy it, or you want to see other work, I have a great short that's still on. It's a Vimeo staff pick called "The Phantom 52" with Tom Skerritt that I'm really proud of. It's only 7 minutes of your life, so if you don't want to seek out my new film, you can always watch that 7 minute film, and I'm very proud of it. But I would tell all of you to, if you want to do something for me in a way, it doesn't promote me, unfortunately, but I think it promotes everybody. Wherever you live, there are regional film festivals. So like the Denver Film Fest is coming up. If you're here locally, please come see Quantum Cowboys, the Denver Film Fest. But please go see some of those other films. Go see the shorts. Don't just go see the stuff that is getting all the press. Like, it's really great to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, or The Incredible Weight of Being Nicolas Cage, or whatever that title is. They're great films. You should watch those. They're awesome. But they're also films with national distribution and streaming and all of those things. When you look at a film festival list, there's a bunch of films like Quantum Cowboys. I'll promote Lily Gladstone for a minute, who is, frankly, you should also go see her little tiny indie film, Killers of the Flower Moon, that this guy Martin Scorsese is directing. I don't know if it's going to get any real press, but that's coming out. She's the star of my film and the star of that film. But she also has another film called The Unknown Country that's played a bunch of these festivals. And I always encourage people to see films like that you might not have otherwise get a chance to see, especially on the big screen. And I think I want to thank you. You mentioned at the beginning of this interview that my film is one of those that you really need to turn your cell phone off and pay attention. If you're also checking your email while you watch my film, you're not going to like it. It's not going to make sense. There's a lot of information coming very quickly, and it's confusing. But if you sit in a dark theater and have to watch it, you have a lot better chance of liking it. And I think a lot of the indie films take chances like that of saying, hey, David Lynch wouldn't have the career he has if we had to watch all of his early films while we were checking our email. I think people would have given up on A Lost Highway. They would have given up on Eraserhead. Instead, those are some of the most influential films, of the last 30 years. So I think what all of you should do is, when you get the chance, seek out these films that might, quote unquote, not be as good, not be as expensive, not be as polished, but check them out, see what people are doing when they're really thinking outside of the box, and when that film might not come back around. So I'm just going to promote every single small film organization around the country, every Austin Film Society, every Denver Film Society, every Tallgrass, or Sidewalk Film Festival. I think go see those movies because they're awesome. Go the Horsetooth, if you're local too, the Horsetooth stuff they do at the Lyric and just up the road in Fort Collins. Everything's going on down at the C Center, in Denver. The stuff we play on campus at the International Film Series. Really check those out because you won't regret it. That's what I'll promote.
Yes. I feel like not a whole lot of people know about, local film festivals or even film societies within their town. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely look that up if you're interested, no
And
matter
if
where
you want
you
to be a
live.
filmmaker, if you're, if somebody's 15-year-old high school kid listening to this right now and they're like, hey, I want to be a filmmaker, that's where to start. Volunteer at those festivals, join those film societies, because they're going to start connecting you to the same way. I fell in love with Anna Karenina and with Alex Cox and with Gary Farmer. They're going to connect you, opening those worlds of films you didn't know existed, of sometimes harder to watch films, frankly, but ones that are going to help you build film language and ideas of what cinema can be. And I feel like most cities of a certain size all have this, and they should be sought out. You should support them because they're also generally really interesting people that run them. So you also can make good friends in your towns. So.
Yeah. And you know what, Jeff, I just want to say before we wrap up here, thank you for taking the time to sit down, talk about your film.
Of
Based on the
course.
schedule you have currently, man, you should be unconscious right now.
Yeah, I
Uh,
know.
it's just been a joy chatting with you, and I hope as the show goes on, as your films continue to go into production and are
Uh,
released and grow, that I can have you back and maybe even do one in person because
I, I
as we
would love
found
that.
out, we live so close
I
together.
know. I didn't realize you were so close to where I am. That's amazing. And absolutely, if things work out, and so, well, for one, I don't know if you come to the Denver Film Fest, please do. And a lot of the crew and some of the cast will be with me in Denver. Please
Oh,
come
perfect.
find me if you are
Yeah.
at the Denver Film Fest, and let's hang out and grab a drink. But further, if we are lucky enough to make more of these films, I'd love to invite you out to set and see what we do. So maybe something
Oh,
like that.
absolutely. I guarantee you, I will be sending in a tape for those films as well.
Okay, good,
Uh,
good, good. Yes, because you acted in town, right?
yeah, yeah. So that's how I built most of my career, and then I started this in the pandemic. So this is my way of keeping that networking
I love it.
muscle still afloat. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
to come on
fantastic.
set and just absorb everything you're doing and go, how is this going to affect me in a dark theater in 9 months? Like, I'm so excited. Uh,
It's yeah, no, exactly. Well, and I was so happy to see you'd had Kiowa on because he's right.
yeah.
You had one other person, right? Who else? It was Kiowa.
I had Akiko Tabe and
Oh,
Jessica Madden.
yeah, and Aki, like I haven't seen him in person 20 years maybe. He
No way.
acted in a student film I made while I was still in grad school. He was great. I think he was probably the best. I don't want to knock anyone. I can't remember who else was in that particular film, so I won't say the best, but I'm going to say probably the best, one of the best performers in that. But
Wow.
yeah, so I should. We're still Facebook friends. I'm gonna have to tell him I did this podcast and let him know. But that I was when I saw his name on the list of people you'd interviewed, I was like, "That's amazing," because I haven't seen him in 20 years. But yeah,
Wow.
so
That's crazy. 20, yeah. Let
because
them
he used to
know.
live in Austin. He was an Austin guy back in the day.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
that makes so much sense. No,
yeah,
it's this has just been a giant project. It's been growing continuously. I'm meeting more and more people, and it's just been great hearing everyone's story. And yeah, Denver Film Fest. In fact, when this episode comes out, we will be a few weeks away from it. So this will
great.
be promoted with the film and getting everyone's ears and eyes on it. But before we depart this recording, I have one last thing we need to do,
Absolutely.
and that is conduct our infamous awkward goodbye. Now, I'm not sure if, I mean, you're a huge Jarmusch fan, but I grew up on the sort of grunge comedies of the 90s. So are you familiar with Wayne's World?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So the awkward goodbye starts with me giving you a silent Wayne's World countdown where I'm doing the numbers. And then when I point to you, just give me your best verbal awkward goodbye, and I will end the recording on that.
Okay,
You could be ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. In.
Until next time, this has been a pretend world. Goodbye.